Hello and welcome to Future Imperfect. I'm your host, Admiral Phillips, and in this episode, I'll be taking you on the first journey of 2018. So welcome back, everyone. And we're going to be getting into some Star Trek news, some stuff on Star Trek Online, and of course, Star Trek Discovery. So first off, it wouldn't be remembering Star Trek without going to the year 1993, 25 years ago, when Deep Space Nine premiered. It's crazy when you go to think about it. I remember when this series came out way back when, and it's just wild to think about it. And then looking at the documentary of Deep Space Nine that's coming out later this year, later this summer, I believe. Which I'm really looking forward to. La La Land Lounge that's on Geekcast Radio. La La Land announces Deep Space Nine Volume 2 soundtrack, which is a 4-disc collection from the Masters of Trek television soundtracks. And so that's available as well. A follow-up to their 2013 release. So we've got a lot of Deep Space Nine love coming out. And then, of course, we've got some things pertaining to the Star Trek films. Jonathan Frakes, for instance, offers Tarantino a tip for directing Trek, saying, "Don't forget the heart before you eat it. Don't forget the heart." And so he says he's fascinated at looking what Tarantino does with the installment. There's no idea what's going on with that yet. So we'll just have to wait and see, but it probably won't be till 2019, 2020 before that even happens. And then Frakes, who directed Discovery's season premiere, or mid-season premiere, teased to death in Chapter 2, which is kind of shocking that it's really the only intelligent person on the crew that has the capabilities to figure things out and not be kind of awestruck. And in kind of prep for this episode, because everybody, I guessed last year when we were rounding out the season that we were going to the Mirror Universe. Obviously they said it, but I kind of knew what was going to happen, essentially, with the Mirror Universe. I will also preface this with saying that I think Tyler's still I think they've alluded to it, and I think that he is the Klingon character that disappeared in episode 3, the albino Klingon. I think that the female Klingon either A, took his persona and wrapped it over top of Tyler, or Tyler, I'm more leaning towards the fact that my original thought that Tyler in the show is basically that character turned human, and that they kind of spliced him together with a remnant of a human with the human blood and everything else, and managed to create this hybrid that registers as human. However, I find it funny that Dr. Culber is the only one to notice anything with his psychiatric issues and with his bone structure. So I do find that very entertaining. Another of Trek in the media, Star Trek is to be featured on the show The Toys That Made Us, which is on Netflix. It's a documentary series basically dedicated to franchise toys. So they're going to have a Star Trek episode with their toys, and I'm looking forward to that, because you're going to have things from like Mego and McFarlane and Playmates and Kenner and stuff like that, all the various toy lines. So I'm very looking forward to this when it comes out. And then of course there's Black Mirror, which had their episode, the USS McAllister, and there's possible rumblings that may get a series as of yet. So, and then another Star Trek-y news that's kind of out is Dakota Fanning is playing a Star Trek superfan in a movie called Please Stand By, which I found to be a little bit interesting. She's basically almost she is autistic in the film, an autistic Star Trek fan living in a group home who learns about a Star Trek screenwriting contest and becomes determined to submit her own story. And then, funny enough, the person that plays her sister in it is Into Darkness, Alice Eve, who played Carol Marcus. Basically, just, is useless in this. But I do find that this is funny that they're referencing the Star Trek universe and the animated series, and her script is basically Spock visiting Deep Space Nine in her episode, which is The Many and the Few, which I think it would be interesting if that was actually there or a book, but I'm kind of looking forward to this, even though it's kind of out of the norm of something I would watch, but it's still Star Trek, so kind of got to go with it. And then of course there's just a plethora of names for season 2 episodes, which began January 7th with the 10th episode, and then they have all 10 through 15 titles. Episode 10 is Despite Yourself, 11 is Wolf Inside, 12 is Vaulting Ambition, 13 What's Past is Prologue, 14 The War Without, The War Within, and 15 Will You Take My Hand. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with this, and from here on out with the series. So I think I'm going to kind of take it into the Star Trek Online aspect, and what I want to preface this with is the fact that they're constantly changing up the game and making it better. I've kind of recently gotten back into it from a little short hiatus. I mean, I've been playing it, but not really playing it. But they're about to introduce this new crafting ability in the game, where you can basically re-roll certain mods, granting you the ability to craft and modify certain pieces of equipment to your own specifications. So it lets you unlock and lock like the AC damage, control damage, CRT-H, and then accessory damage, and so like you can lock and unlock different things, and it costs dilithium and salvage, and you can repiece it together basically. So I think that's kind of cool, because there's a lot of gear that I'd rather tweak in a different way, and not a fan of how it originally comes, so that would be a nice way to retweak it to your playing style. And among the other things they're going to have new, or more so, returning featured episodes where you can get some gear that was previously decommissioned in the game. So, like, you can play the Spectres saga of the Davidians, and you get the Ophidian Cane. So, Federation, Klingon, Romulan, you can use this specific thing, and you get to play the episodes in the series. I'm not sure if you get to play the whole saga again, which is kind of annoying. I hope that you can only play one episode or one section, but I think you got to play the whole episode. And then Cloaked Intentions for the Star Empire. You can get a Riemann Science Officer. Then there's the 2800 for the Dominion. You get the Shard of Possibilities, which I've seen in game, and it's kind of cool because you can generate 2 secondary characters of yourself to help fight in the battle. So that one I'm definitely going to be doing. And then the Cold War, the Breen, you get a Breen Tactical Bridge Officer. So for all 3 factions. So it's going to be kind of cool to see that re-enter the game. And then later this year, we're supposed to get the I think later this summer, late summer, early fall, we're supposed to get the next episode, which is the Gamma Quadrant aspect of the game. So I'm really looking forward to this. So I've seen a lot of. I've kind of gotten off my soapbox for the most part of my love-hate relationship with Discovery. I've just kind of I found kind of the perfect quote on social media, and I feel that this kind of resonates with me. Anyways, so Trek on Tube mentions so Star Trek Discovery is Star Trek. Okay, yes, it's Star Trek. He says, but this particular person says, but does it resonate at the same quantum frequency as all the other Star Trek TV series? So, in other words, it could be canon, just not necessarily the same canon. So basically, you can have it almost in essence, like the episode where Worf sees like the multiverse of Trek. So I mean, you could have this could just be one multiverse, and in that essence, I'd be fine with it. Where there's slight differences and stuff. So I mean, I guess if that's the case, then I can kind of put it behind me. But I thought that was kind of a perfect quote of Discovery. And then there's others people that are complaining, that saying, you know, all cards on the table. I didn't want a prequel either. Too many of the same exact issues. Making an effort to move past them of everybody having the same complaints. Still aware every time something doesn't line up, but still I want to have the best experience possible, so I'm letting things go. And then other people are like, I can't let it go. The current Trek writers are eventually going to have to write a good show, and special effects can only take them so far. And I kind of agree to disagree. I mean, there's different aspects about it that are good and bad. Another quote that I found kind of funny is the Science Faction pod mentions that if you mix the new Trek and Orville, you get a perfect Star Trek show, which I would actually agree. But it's just kind of funny to see all of us kind of flying around. But yeah, I'm kind of excited for the show as it goes on, but I'm going to take a quick break and come back with the discovery of the season premiere, Despite Yourself. So I'll be back after this. And we're back. So, Despite Yourself. This was an interesting episode, and I think Ryan from This Week in Geek mentions it pretty well. Discovery knocked it out of the park this week with their best episode yet. Love what it sets up for the future with the insinuation our not so beloved captain may not be from where we originally thought, which I've kind of thought Lorca wasn't from the main universe anyway. I thought he was from the mirror universe, which would explain his gut reaction to violence over just, in military protocol over anything else, and kind of fits in with Cornwell's, you've changed and you've got these scars and blah blah blah. And so why is he mapping the mirror universe? I mean, and why did he set the quantum the whole thing in motion? So it's interesting to kind of play in this field here, and I think that between Tyler being the Klingon reformed as human, the albino Klingon, and he wasn't in the show long enough for me to care about his name, and then you get Lorca, who's probably from the mirror universe anyway. It's kind of fitting because they mentioned that Lorca disappeared, and I just watched Mirror Mirror because I kind of wanted to cross-reference the difference in the 10-year time span. And they mentioned that, for one, you get to see the difference in uniforms. The sashes are different even, because the new belts and thigh-high holsters kind of emulate the gold sashes worn in 67. And then a lot of the badges on the chest do. However, this new faction, they have the Discovery uniforms, but with basically tactical armor over top instead of the other method. But it's kind of interesting to see how different it all looks. I did like the aspect where the Discovery had to go ISS Discovery, and they stole the Klingon databanks to kind of piece together information, much like Kirk and McCoy had to with the computer library in Mirror Mirror. I also like the fact that they had to disguise all the crew and all of the comm badges and everything on the ship to look like the Mirror Universe. So I think it was kind of fitting that the Shenzhou, and I know I'm butchering that name, but I like the fact that Burnham is the captain of that ship, and it kind of leads you to wonder if Burnham took command by killing Georgiou, or if Georgiou is the Emperor. People have, because they've said that the Emperor is mysterious, and they don't really insinuate who the Emperor is yet, but I have my kind of mentality that it's Georgiou. I don't think that it's Cornwall. People have been saying it's Cornwall. I don't think it's Cornwall. I think it's Georgiou, because that would be a fitting way for her to come back and still be able to play her part, albeit briefly. So I think that would be interesting. Otherwise, it would be kind of funny to see like the fact that Kirk is the reference, or someone to that nature there. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Somebody even mentioned how, because I do also love how they bring up the Constitution class starship for the first time in this episode, where they mentioned the Defiant, which is supposed to be out gathering information, which fits in with the them, with Star Trek Online and with the other part of the timeline where they're kind of phased into the original timeline, as it were, or from the original timeline into wherever it disappeared to, space and time, and it ends up in the Mirror Universe, and that's how it ends up on Enterprise on the episode Mirror Darkly, and they take command of that ship, and that's why they're so more technologically advanced, and so it kind of makes sense. And then you have Emperor Sato, who somebody was like, oh, could it be Emperor Sato? And they're like, well, she'd be quite old at this point if she wasn't killed off by a successor. And then so most people are thinking that it's Georgiou. So we'll see when it comes back. But they also kind of paled this whole way that Tyler's brain control, mind control thing, split personality disorder, surfaced enough to talk Klingon, and then had him conversing with the Klingon prisoner, and then he snaps back to Tyler, and she's like, it's not right, you should have remembered, and like she was trying to get the albino Klingon to surface, and it's just fractured and lost in there between the personalities, and he's dazed enough that he ends up killing Culber, and people were just irate when that whole scene played out, when Tyler just snapped him, and it's bad when the fan backlash causes the producers and the show itself to produce a statement, in essence, mentioning the fact that the character's not actually gone, and kind of pales this whole, kind of makes this thing feel hollow at this point. They did kind of mention the fact that, and people were more so mad because of the LGBT issue and the fact that he was a character of color and he was actually intelligent. And they killed him off in a very kind of bleh way. But I can see where it made sense. And then they kind of mentioned how that's, science fiction and Star Trek. There are many possibilities that it's not the end of Culbert's story. So it's no different than in the original series where they killed off, they basically everybody in the crew. Like everybody at some point died from the original crew, and then came back in some mysterious manner. So they said they've been assured that this is a long, epic journey, and they know where it's going, and excited to be telling the story. But in order for them to tell that story, this had to happen. So they're inviting people to go on that journey and be part of it, to be magnificent. And some of it's going to be disappointing. There's going to be glory and triumph and heartbreak, but we will come out at the other end better for it. And then they said, so go on the ride with us. So they stated that Culbert's not 100% dead. So it's kind of left open, but they needed it for this shock value and the fact that he's an important character. And you got to remember too that Stamets is in kind of La La Land here in Spore Land, and you never know what powers he may be granted. I mean, he's almost got kind of like that Gary Mitchell, Great Beyond type, the Great Barrier type power at this point. Like, can control, remember different times, can see through things. Like he's kind of ranting about how the enemy's here the whole episode, and then he's holding Stamets in the next episode. I think that there's going to be a lot of things going on between the rest of the season, but they did set up the rest of the season fairly nice, and I'm kind of glad that we're out of this whole Klingon crap for the most part, and kind of into a more interesting story. And I like the fact that Tilly had to become Captain Killy on the Discovery, and then you have the whole Discovery ship traded places with itself, which is kind of funny. It makes you wonder what's going on and whether they're going to show the Prime universe and having the ship kind of wreaking havoc on the Klingons or whatnot. And I like the fact that Burnham got command of the Shenzhou, and she's kind of having to play the part until they can get the information they need to get to the Defiant and figure out how it got there and figure out how to get back. And it kind of makes me wonder if they get the spore drive working, because there's a couple of methods they could go with this. They could do the spore drive and try and get back. They could do the method of how Scotty modified the warp field to create the effect to shoot back to the original universe. They could get something off of the Defiant. There's also the aspect that they could get the Tantalus field and find it somewhere. And I'm not sure where they'll find it. I mean, it could be a part of Starfleet, and they could figure out, that that's perhaps how Lorca ended up in the Prime universe in the first place. But they also state that Lorca was the captain of his ship at the Battle of the Binary Stars. So it makes you wonder if, this Lorca is the same Lorca or not, because the other Lorca was completely disappeared at this point. So, but it could have also been that the Prime universe Lorca was killed with his ship, and this Lorca that we have was tortured in the mirror universe, and that's why he has the eye issue. And then he is teleported with the Tantalus field to the main universe from the mirror. So it's there's a lot of theories going around right now. There's a lot of headcanon and a lot of theories until we see what's going on. I hope that they explain why the Klingons look the way they do and why that whole thing transpired. But I guess we'll have to wait and see, and why the tech is so advanced in some of this, but and why the uniforms look polarizingly different than the cage, which takes place around the same time as this. So I'm kind of hoping that they fix some of this canon issue, graphically anyway, and then kind of mention what's going on. So But overall, I enjoyed this episode. I think that it was fairly strong for the season. I think that it's definitely on its way to a stronger start than some of the other Star Trek series had at this point. And when you kind of break it down, it's just it was better written, and it was better directed, and kind of the only thing that irritated me is when they were looking at the kind of the star chart thing, and they were swirling around the table. It was kind of making me dizzy and hard to see. But overall, like, the episode was really well done. It was really well done. So I just hate the fact that they had to kill off a character as a shock value to bring him back later. So we'll have to see what happens, I guess. And wouldn't it be interesting to see some future character being the Emperor, like maybe get shot back in time or something else, or to see what happens with some of these characters as they kind of go on. But I do find it funny that Culber is the only intelligent person on the ship that seems to have his wits about him on every situation, pretty much. So we'll have to wait and see what happens as a whole. And I think I definitely want to put that out there, that Lorca is actually Mirror Lorca, and that he replaced the original Lorca when he died. So, and I still think that that Tyler's that Klingon in disguise at this point. So we'll see what happens. I think it would be really awesome if they get to be on the Defiant. They did modify the graphic of it. There's a modification in the nacelles and on the edges of the nacelles. So we'll see what they deemed okay to change from the original Star Trek and design and canon. So, and if they modify the bridge, like it pretty much, if they modify any of the stuff from like Defiant or the original series aesthetic, like I can see like glitzing it up a little bit just for the sake of the fact that, you know, it's 21st century. But if they don't keep it really close to that, I know that it's not in the same universe. Like, yeah, a lot of the same aspects can be happening, but it's still not the prime timeline. Like, it could be another quantum timeline, which is entirely possible that this series is set in, and a lot of the same effects take place. But I do find it interesting that they make it to the Mirror Universe, and there's no reference of it to where Kirk would even know what's going on, at being a Starfleet captain. So time will tell. So what do you guys think? Let me know on Twitter at FutureTrack, or on Twitter to myself at SCP21. Tune in for the next episode and let me know your feedback on the episode post or on feedback at alteredgeek.com. So until next time, boldly go where no man has gone before.